What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're here with Miss Jennifer Zeng. Now, she is a journalist and she has her own show, Inconvenient Truths, by Jennifer Zeng. Now, today we want to talk to her because she grew up in China. She has extensive knowledge of the Chinese Communist Party. And, you know, we have a lot of conversations about what China's doing in Africa. And we're going to ask Jennifer, definitely a lot about that today. So, Jennifer, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Jennifer, how long you been a journalist?
Since 2001, after I escaped to China, from China to Australia, I realized, there were no independent media in overseas countries. Especially the Chinese language media, were all either controlled or bought over by the Chinese Communist Party. I feel the lack of independent journalism. So I joined the Chinese edition of Epoch Times in 2001, the first year since I left China. So I've been working in the media industry since then. That's almost 20 years now.
Okay, so you joined Epoch Times, and so you say you feel you had to escape China. So, what was your fear in China itself? Because I'm trying to give the audience just an understanding how the Chinese Communist Party worked with its own citizens, and then we'll get to how they treat Africans. But why did you feel like I got to escape my own country?
I actually was arrested 4 times and then threw into a female labor camp and tortured very badly for 1 year for practicing Falun Gong. Falun Gong is a spiritual practice or movement which was first introduced to the public in China in 1992. And then in 7 years, it has attracted more members than the Chinese Communist Party members. So in 1999, the party felt threatened. So it started to crack down on Falun Gong. And because I was a Falun Gong practitioner, I was arrested and tortured very badly. So halfway through my labor camp, you can say career, I developed a very strong impulse to write a book to expose what's happening around me and what's happening to myself and what I witnessed, because I couldn't believe this was still happening in the so-called 21st century, in the so-called New China, at a place where it's only maybe some 20 kilometers away from the heart of Beijing, Tiananmen Square. So because I wanted to write this book, and because the crackdown is still continuing, and it's still continuing today after more than 21 years, of course, the only possibility for me to be able to write and publish this book is to escape China. Otherwise, there is no possibility I could be sent back to the labor camp and even tortured to death, because that was what happened to many of my fellow Falun Gong practitioners.
Yes, I had a guy, I think it was maybe a year or two ago, he was explaining that people who practice Falun Gong, they would, the Chinese Communist Party would not only kill people like that, but also traffic their organs. He was really talking about the trafficking of organs. Is that something that really happens in those camps?
Yes, actually, I was personally subjected to physical checkups more than once. And actually, on the first day when we were transferred from the detention center to the labor camp, we were first taken to a place to undergo a physical checkup first. And the doctor interrogated us very carefully about our medical history. And I honestly told him I had hepatitis C before I practiced Falun Gong. So he recorded everything very carefully. And after 1 month in the labor camp, we were taken to another larger hospital to do a more thorough physical checkup, again, including X-ray. And another while inside the labor camp where our blood were taken. But we were never shown the result. We were never told the reason. And only after, I escaped, that was in 2006, when I first heard about the practice of organ harvesting. Virtually, they kill people and take out the organs and sell the organs. And then I recall what happened to us in the labor camp, and then it all makes sense. We were subjected to the physical checkup only because they want to know our tissue type, our organ status, and our blood type, so that all the data could be saved into a database. So if anybody needs an organ, they can find a match in that database and kill that person on demand. So that's why the hospitals in China, still today, they can promise you, if you need an organ, they can find one for you, maybe within 2 weeks maximum. Sometimes they can just get you one on the next day. And sometimes they even do so-called emergent organ transplant that within 24 hours, they can find a heart for you. So that kind of thing can never happen in America, in Australia. I know in Australia, you need to wait average 11 years for a liver and 7 years for a kidney. Maybe here a little bit shorter, but definitely it's years, it's not days. But in China, I think it's the only country that can promise to give you an organ in days, less than a month, or maximum 2 weeks. So that was because they have a large database of living human beings, that kill human beings on demand. That has been happening for the past maybe 2 decades, and it's happened to Falun Gong practitioners. Now it's expanded to people in Xinjiang labor camps. I know every male citizen in Xinjiang were subjected to DNA test and blood test because they needed to save the data there to find a match.
Okay,
that's real.
So basically, you saying they've been involved for the past few decades in organ trafficking, and they're taking organs from citizens, correct? I mean, they have prisoners or in labor camps, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, you being a journalist, who is the main customers of these organs?
Anyone who needs an organ. We had, I think, a documentary made by a Korean television station. They went to a hospital in Tianjin City, which is a city very close to Beijing, maybe some 100 kilometers away. So they learned in that hospital that in that hospital alone, they have received thousands of people from South Korea and also from Middle, I think, East, and from Japan, from Taiwan, I think maybe from Australia, from America. Anyone, they call it organ tourism. You travel to China, you do a tourism, and you stay in the hospital, wait for a few days, they got the operation done, and then you can travel back. Of course, many people may also come from China who can offer to pay the money they ask. It can be their customer. So it's worldwide phenomenon.
Wow. So that's a new one to hear, called organ tourism. That is wow.
Yes.
That is very interesting. It's not now this brings me a concern. So if the Chinese Communist Party is doing this to their own citizens, it don't matter what if you practice, if you're a Uyghur Muslim or you are a Falun Gong, what you want to practice, or you practice nothing, right? Still, it's a human rights violations.
Yes.
So for my concern, and the big concern for a lot of our audience, is the Chinese Communist Party is going into Africa, right?
Yes.
And they have their sights set on Africa. Do you think that the Chinese Communist Party will start trying to do organ trafficking out of Africa?
It could be, because this is such a huge billion-dollar profit industry. If they can, they need the source, they need the suppliers too, they need this customer. That's how they can continue with their business. They've already made billions of dollars in all these years. So there's no guarantee that they won't do this into other people to other area if they have this kind of opportunity or when the condition is right.
Okay, so basically, what you're saying is people in Africa should be concerned with the Chinese Communist Party sending so many people, to certain areas. Would you say they should be concerned?
Yes, I think definitely. First of all, I think anyone who does consider going to China to do an organ transplant, you need to think twice. You could be part of the crime. One person could be killed on behalf because you need his or her organ. So I strongly suggest that don't go to China to do organ transplant because this is killing. This is part of the killing business. Of course, if they round up people, they detain you, or I know many in Wuhan city where we all know Wuhan now. But before the pandemic happened, hundreds of university students disappeared in Wuhan. Nobody knows. They were all missing. Nobody knows where they've been, what happened to them. So many people are highly suspected that they could also have become the victim of organ harvesting.
All right, so that's very concerning because we've seen like an uptick of the Chinese Communist Party coming into different African nations. And what they're doing is they're giving out loans that these countries really can't pay. And then in return, they say, well, I want your port. And I think they did that in Jamaica, matter of fact, in the Caribbean.
Yes.
So is that the goal of the Chinese Communist Party, is to get African nations or Caribbean nations in loans so they can, are they trying to have an agenda to take over Africa or the Caribbean?
I think they have multiple agendas with their whatever they are doing in Africa. First of all, of course, it's geopolitical consideration. They want to promote their so-called China model, and they to the entire world, and they want global hegemony, definitely, and they want to compete with the US for the leading role in the world. So Africa, because it's relatively less advanced, developed status, it needs maybe either the investment or the money or whatever support the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, can offer them. So they view Africa, because Africa has very, I think, abundant resources. They also need resources. And geopolitically, if they can win the support of Africa, they can use this as their kind of tool or inside their ability to give them more ability to to compete with the US. And also there are many times they need some kind of vote, either to vote for something or vote down something. Like in the United Nations, they need the votes from the African countries. So and also for the One Belt, One Road project, of course, it's on the one hand, they need to expand their influence globally. And on the other hand, they actually, China's economy is a very unhealthy one. Sometimes it depends heavily on investment. The government invests to build a lot of roads and buildings, airports that is not actually really needed, but they need to produce GDP, growth for their economy. So they heavily invested on those kind of infrastructure. After they build up enough in China, they have this capability that they can't use inside China. So they want to export it, maybe to African countries. So their companies, their workers still got their job, and they keep up the investment and this productivity. They can dump it into African countries to resolve, because they have nothing to do in China anymore. So they can export their steels, their workers, their constructors to those One Belt, One Road countries, and have you pay the bill or you borrow the money from them, and you support their workers, their export of materials. So it's a lot of different agenda attached to it. So anything from the CCP, I think, don't think they come for free or don't think they have the goodwill to help the African people. You look at how they are treating their own people like me. So there's no reason why they should especially treat African people that well if they are torturing their own people to death and kill them to sell their organs. So I think that's a very, very simple logic. Every person with a reason, I think a rational reason should be able to work that out.
You said a mouthful. You said that if they treating their own people this way, why would they treat Africans any better than they treat their own, right?
Yes.
Because we've seen in Guangzhou, maybe it was some months ago, where they was putting Africans out on the streets, and blaming them for the coronavirus. And we both know Africans had nothing to do with the coronavirus. We both know this, okay?
Yeah.
So I made a video then and I said, listen, the Chinese Communist Party have no love and do not like African people at all. OK, they don't. We've seen videos, and maybe you can confirm this, of them beating Africans and laughing about it. Like in Kenya, there was one where one Kenyan man showed up to work late, Chinese man beating him. We've seen other videos where they're trying to put hands on them. So it's safe to say that, a lot of them that's coming into African nations, that they just don't like Africans. They're just there to get money. Is that correct?
Yes, I remember sharing a video as well during that period of time when the African people in Guangzhou were treated badly. I got an exclusive video sent to me from someone in Guangzhou actually showing there were two people going to a supermarket together, but the other person was allowed to get in, but the black people was not allowed to get in. And he also in that video showed a sign in Chinese which says we won't allow African people to get in. We need to try to catch them because they have this kind of virus. I would say that actually the Chinese Communist Party is very racist organization, and I think they are very snobby people. If you have money or if you come from a wealthy country, they look up you, they flatter you. But if they think you come from a poorer country or a less developed country, they look down upon you. I think that's a very common phenomena in China. And if they are good to you because they want to take advantage of you or because you are still useful for them, but in their heart, they don't treat human being as equal. If they only admire power and money, and if they want to crack down on you, they immediately, I think, turned into something like beasts. They don't, I think, understand human rights or human dignity, and they don't treat people as human beings.
Now, I had got an email, and I had actually made a video due to this email by a guy. He calls himself Mr. Chin, and he say he did not like, my video speaking about what, the Chinese Communist Party is doing in Africa. And, he was telling me I shouldn't be talking about them. I need to stop talking and let them, because he claimed they were superior and they're there for the resources, X, Y, Z. And, when I made the video, I said at the time, I said, listen, this kind of goes along with the videos I have seen. And you have some Africans, and some of them will watch this, believe that the Chinese Communist Party is their friend. And you're saying, no, they're not your friend. Be careful.
Yes, actually, we on the one hand, we did say that African people were treated very badly in Guangzhou, but on the other hand, we did say some very, abnormal phenomena in some of the universities in the northern provinces like Shandong. I remember, I forgot which are the other ones. They actually are offering a huge amount of money to African students who went to China to study, and to encourage them to go to China to study and to stay there. They actually force Chinese female students to be, they call it a study company or a study mate for the African students there. So they group them into a couple, a female student with an African student. Sometimes the female students may not want to do that, but they dare not to say no, because you know the Communist Party, they control every resource in the society. If they ask you to do something, you have to do something. So the African students were not only offer a huge amount of money, but offer a girl student to be with them. And I think you can imagine what will happen. So many Chinese, overseas Chinese got very angry about this. So this is so abnormal. You know, if you treat, everybody should be treated the same. Why you suddenly offer some extra benefits to African students? So we Chinese say if there is abnormal thing happening, there must be some hidden agenda behind this. So when they want to win the African maybe people's public opinions, or they want to gain some from you, they offer you extra benefit to attract you. But still, I think, for me, I feel uncomfortable. I think you treat people like human beings. And if you want to come to study, you come, you pay your tuition. Why the CCP offer you a girl? And it's not their own girl, it's other people's girl to these African students. So it's very sinister. So even if they treat you well, they offer you something extra good, they went too far away, I think you should be very careful about what's behind those free girls, free tuition fee. I think it's very sinister.
I didn't know that was going on. That is very
Yes.
interesting. And you know, I can kind of see why the people would get pissed off and want to, of course, probably it should lash out at the Communist Party, but you know how that goes. You disappear when you talk against the Communist Party. We know that.
Yes.
Like whether you're a doctor who's speaking against, talking about the coronavirus and exposing it, or a journalist, they disappear. And this question I have: how do the Chinese Communist Party get away with all these human rights abuses, internment camps like they have for the Uyghurs, people like yourself? How do they get away with it, and like no one condemns them and say, oh, look, this government is hurting its own people, like they done in the Middle East or places like that? How do they get away with that?
I think it's very sad. They use their money to buy their way into many international organizations like the UN, like the Human Rights Committee of the UN. They kick off those countries who really, because like I said, they want African votes in the UN. So they have so many small countries supported. So they some kind of infiltrate the United Nations. So United Nations is not playing its role anymore. Nobody is condemning China, and it's used the money they made from the West to buy over, I think, many Western, you can say, either politicians or people who lobby for them. So they use a little amount of money to corrupt maybe the head of the organization or of a country, and a little bit of bribery. And then we use that head of that organization to control this organization. I think it's very obvious with the situation of WHO, World Health Organization. The US is paying maybe 10 times more money than China to the WHO. But the WHO is defending China so furiously, so vigorously. And why? Because if although the US is paying a lot to this organization, but maybe the CCP just only pay a little bit, but to some individual inside that organization, and then that organization serves the purpose of the CCP. I think it's very, like you said, it's very, very sad. For so many years, so many people like us, like Falun Gong practitioners, from day one, we've been shouting out so loudly to the international world. Look at what's happening to us, and look at what's happening in China, and we try to alert the world of the evil nature of the CCP, and to ask the international world to stop them from doing this. But it's very sad. Money talks, that, and I think in the past several decades, many Western politicians mistakenly think if they just, I think, leave the CCP alone, just do business with them, and if they kill some of their own people, that's okay, because China is so far away. As long as we can make some money, it's okay, we make money. But they don't see through the nature, the evil nature of the CCP. The CCP, if it gets its own way, it will not stop inside China. It will go to the world. I think many years ago, in 2003 something, a general of the CCP called Shi Haotian made a very, very long speech about how they want to take over the US. He made it very clear that because, inside China, the environment, the resources were all either damaged or exhausted, and they knew if they want to stay in power forever, this country is no longer good enough to sustain so many people because of this population. But in the United States, he visited the United States and saw the land is so large, and the river is so clean, and the lake so clean. So if, in his own word, we can lead the Chinese people go out of China and take over America, then our people will support us forever. So back in 2003, they already had a plan to take over America. And in all these years, if you look back, they are carrying out their plan. They talk about unrestricted warfare, like information war, biological war, electronic war. They have so many. Anything can be turned into a warfare against this country. I think the tragedy is, like we Chinese, some people sometimes say, you were sold, but you are still counting money for them, on behalf of them. I think the world didn't see through the evil nature of the CCP, and they want to dance with the wolf or with the devil. They want to do business with the devil, and in the end, I think they will be hurt.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you believe that the Chinese Communist Party have infiltrated spies within America? Do you believe that?
Of course, it's not only my belief that. I think the FBI official a while ago said they are having, every 10 minutes they are starting a new case against any Chinese spies. So that's the FBI's official saying this. Every 10 minutes they are investigating a new case about CCP spying over the US. They have spied in so many different areas, in universities, in scientific institutions, and they turn many ordinary overseas Chinese into kind of not professional spy, but also who are their informant, take information, collect information for them, like who are against the CCP, who belongs to which organization, who is doing what. So they gather all sorts of information, and they know very well what's going on in the US, and who they can try to bribe, who is against them, who are for them, who can be bought over. they gather all this kind of information. I think even the driver of a U.S. Politician for 20 years, they turned out to be a CCP, spy, but that politician maybe didn't know, or maybe she did know. So who knows? I think it's just very shocking if we know every detail of the spy.
So basically what you're saying is one of the greatest threats to the United States of America right now, and Africa as well, and the Caribbean, anywhere the Chinese Communist Party is going, basically they are a major threat to, like I said, definitely Africa for sure, and the United States.
Yes, I think Secretary Mike Pompeo put it very well. Now the fight is not between China and the US, it's a fight between, I think, the tyranny and the freedom. They want their model to overcome, the free and the democracy of this world. So if they get their way, they will be dominating the world and turned, like now I think 1.4 billion people were turned into their slaves, their hostage. If we let them to spread in other countries, I think other people would also become their slave or their hostage.
Well, I can tell you this much, Jennifer. I don't know if you know about our history in the United States as Black Americans. We're not going to be nobody's slave, that's for sure. They haven't fought against us. And for sure, Africa is not going to allow them to come in and colonize them. That's why we wanted to have you here to kind of put out that warning. Like, we talk about it, but to have, you that grew up in China, you was arrested many times by the Chinese Communist Party. You was, put in those camps, all about the worst of the worst and what they do to their own people. You said in this interview, they would kill their own people to sell organs to whoever want them, right? So these are people that we really need to pay attention to, because if they do this to their own, well, what will stop them from doing this to us here in America, or, in Africa or in the Caribbean? That has us greatly, greatly concerned. So what can we do? Like I said, if we wrap up, what can we do as Americans, as Africans, as Caribbeans? What can we do to stand against the Chinese Communist Party?
I think first of all, we need really to educate ourselves about their criminal history and see through their nature, and I think have the courage to stand up and fight back against their aggressive ways in this world.
Okay, so Jennifer, could you tell people how they can check out your show, and maybe if you have any kind of emails, and maybe people can ask you some questions if they have it?
Yes, I have a YouTube channel called Inconvenient Truths by Jennifer Zeng. So you can search for that channel, and I have a Twitter account that's Jennifer@NTD, one word. You can search for that. And also I have a website, jenniferzengblog.com. That's one word, jenniferzeng.com. Also I have a Facebook. You can search also for Jennifer Zeng, Inconvenient Truths by Jennifer Zeng. That's also my Facebook page name. So you can write to me from my website. There is a contact page. You can submit your letter to me.
All right, Jennifer, we'll definitely put that contact information in that pinned comment, and we greatly appreciate you, coming by and giving us definitely some inside information on the evil of the Chinese Communist Party and how we all should be concerned at their movements, whether it's here in America, Africa, the Caribbean, or throughout the world. So, definitely, Jennifer, we appreciate you taking the time today to talk with us and inform our audience of what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.